My name is Frank Barron. I served as coroner of Richland County, South Carolina for 22 years. And I want to share with you the duties that I performed as coroner. I want you to understand what it would be like to be coroner. I know you're interested in pursuing a profession that you would really find to be interesting and challenging, and I feel that being coroner certainly it fits that classification. Not long ago, a man said something on Facebook when I made a statement about coroners should have more education. He said, "What do you need education for in order to pronounce someone dead?" Well, that told me he needed more education about what the coroner did. So I published on Facebook this little synopsis of the duties of the coroner, which I'll more or less read and talk about. I said, coroners in South Carolina. The county coroner is responsible for investigating all suspicious, violent, sudden, unexpected deaths. This includes deaths by homicide, suicide, accidental, and those natural deaths that are not certified by attending physician as natural, that occur outside of a hospital or within the first 24 hours after a person enters in hospital. In other words, if a person is taken to the hospital and they die before they've been there long enough for a doctor who is caring for them to determine that they have an illness, and that doctor is able to certify the exact cause of death as being from a natural cause, then the coroner still has to be involved. The coroner is responsible for certifying the cause and manner of those deaths, which he or she investigates. And there's a difference between cause and manner. The manner of death can only be accidental, suicide, homicide, or natural, or undetermined. But the cause of death can be many different things. To give you an example, a person can die from a gunshot wound to the head. That's the cause of death. But the manner of death could be suicide, accidental, or homicide. In all deaths that the coroner is certifying, a consulting physician examines the body, and when advisable, a pathologist performs an autopsy. The pathologist examines the organs of the body, every organ of the internal organs of the body, examines the outside of the body too, for that matter, and make sure that any evidence is collected that may help to determine what happened to that person. And then the tissues, microscopic slides are made, and the tissues are examined. The histological work is also performed by pathologists. Toxicology is performed on all the body fluids, including gastric contents. So you know, blood, urine, bile, vitreous humor from the eyes, all of those fluids are taken to the chemistry lab for toxicological studies. In cases where a body is in an advanced stage of decomposition, a forensic anthropologist examines the remains. In these cases, forensic entomologists sometimes are very helpful in determining how long someone has been dead. If they've been dead for an extended period of time, they have the ability to determine that more accurately than even the pathologists would. To give an example, there are various insects that invade the body. If the body is exposed to the atmosphere after a person dies, these different insects are attracted to that decomposing body at different stages. And the life cycles of these insects are able to help determine how long a person has been dead. Like if a person was found 6 months or a year after they died. Forensic entomologists can be very helpful. A forensic dentist is known as an odontologist. Is often used in identification of a person who cannot be identified otherwise, such as a badly burned body or badly decomposed body. Forensic dentists can, if you have ante-mortem x-rays of the teeth, those are x-rays while the person is still living, and the post-mortem x-rays can be compared, and it can be determined by them if it is the same person. When the cause of death is other than natural, only the coroner can determine the manner of death. In other words, a doctor cannot say that a person died from homicide, accident, or suicide. Only a coroner can do that. And the coroner does that with the help of all the experts that can be helpful. In some cases, some experts are needed, and in other cases, they aren't needed. When a person is found dead, it is unlawful for anyone to move that body before the coroner arrives at the scene. Law enforcement officers should preserve the scene and all the evidence as it is found prior to the arrival of the coroner. And then the coroner and the law enforcement, the lab people, the forensic science people who work with the law enforcement agency, they should work together on making sure that all evidence is preserved and is examined by the proper experts. The coroner is responsible for safeguarding all of the belongings of a deceased person. If a person dies at home, usually there's some member of their family there to take over their belongings, but if a person is found dead somewhere else, or to give you an example, I remember a case of a man that just dropped dead waiting for a bus, and the belongings on his body, his wallet, money, jewelry, whatever he had with him, I was responsible to see that it was listed, and I always had a law enforcement officer make a separate list so that it could all be accounted for by someone else to protect myself from ever being in a position that I could be accused of taking something. This is true if a person is found dead or dies in their car, and they have a lot of valuables in the car. That man who died at that bus stop, by the way, he lived in a big house with a lot of valuables in it, and he had come here in the Army as a soldier. When he had time off, he took piano lessons from a woman, and she had no family, and they became good friends. And when she died, she left her home to him with everything she owned. She had a lot of sterling silver and crystal and just a lot of valuable furniture, and it was all his. And so when I went to that house and started investigating and talking to neighbors, determined that he had no family anywhere around, actually none in South Carolina. So my office was responsible for having all the belongings in that house protected and safeguarded until we found his sister up in, I think it was Minnesota, and we were able to turn all his belongings over to her. The coroner may interview people who were aware of anything about the person prior to the death or at the time of the death or when the person was found. And the knowledge of the deceased can help in determining the cause and manner of death, like the history of their any health problems or any conflict that they may have had with someone who may have wanted to kill them. So the coroner gets involved in that part of the investigation too at times. The coroner has to issue what's known as a burial removal permit before a funeral home or anybody can take the body once the body is released, and the coroner no longer needs to keep the body for the purpose of collecting any evidence. The coroner has to issue that body removal permit. Also, no one can cremate a body without a cremation permit, because once a body is cremated, you're not going to collect any more evidence. So the coroner must be sure that all that evidence has been collected prior to that. I would just like to share with you some of the things that I studied. I am a Citadel graduate, and my degree is in criminal justice at the Citadel, but in addition to all the courses of criminal justice, I took the normal prerequisites, in English and math and statistics and psychology, but I also studied anatomy, physiology, chemistry, and medical terminology. But to give you some idea of specific forensic science courses I studied crime scene investigation, the nature of evidence, pathology, anthropology, odontology, entomology, which I mentioned those, serology and blood stain pattern analysis, DNA analysis, that is deoxyribonucleic acid, illicit drugs, forensic toxicology, textile fibers and paint analysis, soil and glass, fires and explosions, friction ridge and fingerprint analysis, question documents and handwriting analysis, firearms and tool marks, impression evidence, and bite mark analysis. In addition to those, legal aspects of forensic science, ethics and professional issues of forensic science, critical issues in law enforcement, juvenile delinquency, status of offenders, very interesting subject. Actually, those are people who are minors. They're not adults who break a law that would not be illegal for an adult, such as smoking, drinking, not going to school. Those are called status offenders. Police systems and practices, organized crime, multiculturalism and crime, deviant behavior, medical sociology, criminology, criminal justice, corrections, white-collar crime, social problems and solutions, including poverty and inequality, work and the economy, drug, alcohol, and tobacco abuse, racial and ethnic inequalities, gender inequalities, aging, environmental hazards, education and quality of life, immigration and refugees, and war and terrorism. I studied all of these things at the Citadel, and I think that they were all very interesting, and maybe you would say some of those things wouldn't particularly be helpful to a coroner, but I think the more education you can have, the better, and I think that we need laws passed in the state of South Carolina requiring coroners to have a bachelor's degree from a well-established institution, and that they also be required to have a lot of the courses I named, whether they're, I don't think they should be able to get a degree in business or a degree in even like English. They subjects in those departments will be very helpful. Being able to use good grammar and to know English is certainly important, but they need to know the forensic sciences, and they need a good basic chemistry and biology. What else would you be interested in knowing about the coroner? Well, in South Carolina, the coroners have to be elected in 46 counties, and they are partisan elections, which very often may elect less than the best person. They should be nonpartisan, and that law should be changed so that the best person in each county can be elected coroner. The salaries vary quite a bit, because in some counties there's a very small population and the coroner doesn't have a lot of work to do, and so they really are part-time, and the salaries may be very low, just a few $1,000s, whereas in the larger counties like Greenville, Charleston, and Columbia, the salaries may be $150,000 or so. So let's see, what else would you be interested in? Because since coroners are government employees, county employees, they do receive benefits, medical insurance, retirement, a vehicle to drive in the line of their duty, as long as they're close enough to respond to a call. And coroners have to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. Christmas, Easter, whenever. Coroners can have deputy coroners. They can appoint other people, and they can give the power of the office to that person to do the work of the coroner's office. So those people need to be well trained also. However, they do not have to know everything that the coroner knows. The coroner needs to be able to read medical records and talk to physicians and all of these experts just as if they were expert in that field. They don't need to know everything those people know in their expertise, in their field, but they need to understand it and have a thorough understanding of the, like an autopsy report, and be able to explain it to a family member. Some of the other duties of the coroner are like notifying the next of kin of a death. Sometimes coroners have to write reports that determine whether how insurance is handled. Of course, the ruling of the coroner, like if the coroner rules a death accidental, that could cause the insurance company to pay double instead of just the regular amount. So it's very important, unless it's a certainty, that the coroner says that the amount of death is undetermined. If it's some doubt about it, they should not just make a ruling just because they feel that it's this way or that way. There needs to be proof. Thank you very much for your time and patience of listening to my rambling. I wish you could ask questions, but under these circumstances, I guess you can't unless you would like to call me or write to me. My email address is feb3al@aol.com. If you send an email to me, I get maybe a couple hundred a day. If I don't respond within 24 hours, feel free to call me. My cell phone number is 803-600-7119. 803-600-7119. Once again, I'm Frank Barron. I served as coroner of Richland County for 22 years. I was president of South Carolina State Coroner Association 7 times, and I'm happy to be of any help to you and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.